Up next on our agenda is a panel on how corporates are reshaping their business strategies using technology. The panelists for the session are Biswajit Biswas, Chief Data Scientist, Tata Elxsi; Rahul Bedi, Senior Director, IoT, Intel Corporation; Tarun Katial, CEO, Z5. The panel will be moderated by Rajesh Tutu, Business Head, Cybersecurity, APJ and India, Tech Mahindra. Over to you, Rajesh.
Yeah, thanks, Shivani. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this panel session. I think the topic is very, very apt given the current pandemic. The topic is about how corporates are reshaping their businesses using technology. And interestingly, I was going through the Fortune 500 CEO survey. I think that survey and the results of that survey have been shared multiple times over multiple WhatsApp groups. However, one particular aspect where all of the CEOs have unanimously agreed that the ensuing pandemic is going to drive the digital transformation in their respective businesses from their customers' perspective also significantly. There's a very high percentage of CEOs who have agreed on that. There were about 20 parameters that got evaluated. Out of that, this particular parameter had almost about 75% of the CEOs agreeing that the current pandemic will accelerate the pace of digital transformation. And with a mad race now happening in the corporates wherein they are bringing in all kind of technologies, primarily to give confidence to the employees to bring them back into the offices, the need for technology to foster that particular change, the need for technology to foster confidence in the existing processes, and also the confidence about the ability of the enterprises to manage the current pandemic is pretty high. So from that perspective, would like to check from our panelists today, Biswajit, Rahul, and Tarun. I can see Biswajit and I can see Rahul. I can't see Tarun. Is Tarun on, Shivani? Okay, so seems like he's not been able to join. That's fine. That means more sound bites for Biswajit and more sound bites for Rahul, and we'll live with that. So Rahul and Biswajit, thanks for joining this session. Given the context, what are you seeing in your respective businesses, especially from a tech-driven innovation, and also the life cycle from idea to implementation? Right, in the past, we have known that many companies have used the waterfall model, and from waterfall model it went to an agile development, and whatever agile development we had till date, because of the pandemic, that agile seems to be pretty slow. The word agile itself seems to have to be rewritten given the current context and also the amount of change that is required. So maybe we can start with Rahul and get his perspectives, what you're seeing in your organization with your customer fraternity and also with your partner fraternity, and then we can go to Biswajit.
Sure, thanks, Rajesh. Am I audible?
Yeah, absolutely, loud and clear. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think COVID has been, it's like, let's call it a slap in the face, right? As you wake up one day and you realize the world's getting locked down. I'll give an example to kind of make my point, and this is an internal example. We were in the middle of doing some our silicon power-ons as we build new products. The fairly extensive power-ons. You go to a lab, you have lots of people showing up, sometimes upwards of multiples of tens of people, and teams collaborate globally. And we've just found that you can actually get no one into office. It's completely locked down, and so that was. And we were about a couple of weeks away, and in a global setup where your equipment is stuck up all across the world. I mean, I had my team built some of these hardware for what we use. We had equipment that was stuck up. We had about 800 components stuck in about 10 countries, and we had no way that we could actually get them to where we need to actually assemble into something worthwhile. But I think what we realized was it's as internally you move away from, oh my God, it's panic. And we move from the panic situation into, okay, there's stuff we can do here that can make things happen. So we had to very quickly change our supply chain models very, very rapidly. In a matter of like 24 hours, we changed things around. We had to change how we access those basic physical labs, right? And so we went remote, and we went distributed. So which means instead of one lab, we actually went to 3 labs across the world, because everyone had this small number of people you can get into every lab. So you maximize that and get people in. But I think what we realized was that that showed us that the forcing function that COVID created allowed us to change very fast, right? And which was kind of you said, like agile on steroids, right? It allowed us to change very fast, because there was the date of getting the part out was not negotiable, because you had customers waiting for that part, right? So that allowed us to change it. It allowed us to bring up new technology very quickly. So for example, how well can you do remote access to some of these things that initially you were not even heard of, right? So those things changed. And that is something that now has brought out technology for us that we will also make sure our customers get it, because it's a new thing for us. So that was kind of the more of an inward-facing view as we've seen it. You know, looking at it from a point of view of our customers, the fact that pretty much everyone's at home, right? So at this, so the realization that happened is that you don't have to be physically present at a customer site to meet them. You can actually be all remote, and it works just fine. So from our perspective, what we realized is, I think most of our programs, actually the majority of our programs, are all on track, no problems. It's just that the paradigm changed, but we just regrouped and everything's on track, everything's fine. We had a lot of our customers who we cannot visit them. They're all remote, and they're all on locked in. So you have kids playing in the background, but you have business discussions going on. So that's a paradigm shift. Working from home has been a big paradigm shift, because I think this is a global experiment that's happened, right? I mean, I don't think so as a company, we were very ready for working from home. We could do a lot, but not at this scale. So that was a big change that happened, and that's impacted. But that brought other aspects to it, right? So there is, how do you collaborate? I mean, a big part of innovation is you kind of get a couple of, a small team in a room, and you have all these stand-ups and stuff, and you get things churning. How do you do that when you're physically not present? But I think what we've seen is that's actually working pretty fine remotely. It's working actually pretty fine, right? We've not had any challenges. So web becomes big. I mean, platforms like what we are right now, Zoom and all those web platforms have become super important. But I think other thing that I view as a positive that's happened is that I would call it, it's kind of made the corporate setup a little more democratic. You know, everyone's home, everyone's locked in across the world, right? So it's not that one versus other. Everyone is locked in. The second part is that you know that no one's traveling, so it's everyone the click away. If you're the right time zone, it's one click away. That just makes people, I find, more accessible, because you don't have to run around where they are. They are pretty much in front of the PC or wherever they are. It's just made things changes, and that, in my view, has enabled greater collaboration to some extent, because you can reach people much faster, a lot more accessible.
Understood.
I think those are some things that we've seen. I mean, why don't we go around? I think there are many more we can.
Absolutely, Rahul. You do bring about an important point. You said that your response timelines were hardly about 24 hours. That means the technology to facilitate that has already been there, but it was just not being tapped. So there are inertia aspects pertaining to that. That also constitutes a significant driver of the tech transformation or the digital transformation. Right. We will touch upon that. And now we have Tarun also. Hello, Tarun.
Hi, how are you? Good afternoon.
We're good. Thank you. We're just discussing about, how COVID-19 pandemic seems to have proven to the enterprises that whatever tech transformation that they went through is completely suboptimal, and it kind of became an eye opener. And whatever agile methodologies that we were using, it kind of proved that you need agility maybe to the power of n, and whatever is the existing agility is not sufficient. We'll come back to you after we go to Biswajit. So Biswajit, what did you see from Tata Elxsi's perspective in terms of what kind of technology transformations, newer things that have come into the businesses, or existing things have been repurposed to cater to the requirements. So what's your perspective over that?
Yeah. So that's I mean, as we have been hearing, I mean, this was basically a epoch time. I mean, you have a situation where, and this lockdown was introduced in the very last week of March. And, that's the time you have the maximum, your quarter ending, you have a lot of deliverables, you have customers to deliver, you have to address to these invoices. So there are a lot of deliveries which are all lined up, and suddenly then we are asked to go home and work from home. So it's actually the very small time to actually prepare for those changes. And some of the divisions which has a lot of hardware dependencies, especially for my team, we have the GPUs and machines, and not all of the data is to be accessed from outside, because there are critical data, sensitive data. So some of those has dependency towards being in the office for some time. So yes, it took few days to actually change the style of work, and then make it more. So as time progressed, I think by second week of April we are all good. I think it was only a brief period of few days. We had some productivity issues, but later on we actually picked up. And I think I very agree with the point that yes, the productivity actually there was a little bit it increased rather than dropping. People are all available, they're all at home, they have nothing else to do, and they have nowhere else to go. So all of their time is actually devoted towards work. And when you give a developer a machine, so actually they can do is just finish the coding and the stuff. So that's what we found a bit easier. So the more time it was available for people, and these collaborative platforms. So we had those multiple sessions, meetings. So even though we are in office and agile mode we are following, but not sometimes we can feel it as a like is a proper way, because problem is people will be distracted, and then people will but where we have an online platform, it's more democratic, and then we have everybody's time available, and the number of meetings we are doing were actually much more than what we actually do in a normal.
Sorry to interrupt. That in terms of, yes, it has contributed to a significant increase in the availability of people, the productivity, nothing else to do. So the work becomes the favorite pastime in these pandemic times. Any new business models that have emerged or anything that from a Tata Elxsi perspective, because of the current lockdown scenario, and also because of the current inefficiencies which came to the fore primarily because of this pandemic, any new business models that would have come up? Maybe you want to think about that, and in the next round, you may want to talk about that with the viewers and the audience. Going back to Tarun, hope you're around. The good thing that the pandemic has resulted is a significant increase in the consumption patterns of G5. I'm sure it would have led to a significant increase in the binge watching on Z5. What other transformation things that you felt like if you had those tech transformations in place, you could have capitalized the existing scenario a lot more? Probably you could have unlocked a lot more benefits for the company as well as for your customer fraternity.
So two things. One, I've had a Zoom account for 4 years, a Zoom Pro account.
Okay.
So for everybody who was coming on to Zoom for the first time, I was so happy that I had some company, right? Because we've worked remote for many, many years, and most of our development partners, Tata Elxsi being one of them, we work with them either on Slack or on Zoom for many, many years. One. And second, I think, in our mind, we were kind of ready for remote working for a very long period of time. We knew that we were wasting enormous amount of time coming to work, at least 2 hours on both sides, and we're not achieving much. So I think it was a big quantum leap in just time in Bombay, which is equal to productivity, equal to money, equal to everything else. Okay. But let me come back to you about what COVID did to us and so on and so forth. So obviously, like you said, consumption has gone up, and primarily consumption's gone up of paying customer, the premium customers, because that's where we really had content to offer. Unfortunately, the advertising supported catch-up TV content anyway contracted because the shooting stopped and we didn't have enough content there. But that's where we needed to be really nimble and dynamic. And we then brought in a new category on our platform called news. We saw the offtake was news as youth. We always had a little bit of news with the Z network and so on and so forth, but we didn't have an expanded, aggregated news service. And we found partners from across the country, from India Today to Republic to almost every big news channel in the country. We remotely configured them to come onto our platform.
Right.
We got all their feeds on an IP base. But not only that, we got technology to be able to do dynamic ad insertion, to be able to replace their advertising that was playing on linear, so that we were able to monetize that. And we had technology that was lying that we hadn't really implemented at scale, and do dynamic ad insertion through a media tailor and through another tool. And to be able to then build that segmented and programmatically. And such use cases so that we could continue to serve our users and to be able to build scale at the time with the kind of things people were interested in. So we've been working on a hyper short business, which was user generated content. One of the big things you must realize happened is that we stopped producing content. So because we stopped producing content, user generated content is the only way forward, right?
Right.
And so we quickly put our short user hyper shorts business into alpha, and in the end of this month, early next month, we'll put it in beta, and we'll possibly be the only super app in the country that allows both curated content and user generated content. And that was a big quantum leap that we did on just the kind of business we were in. We were in the business of curated catch-up TV premium content, and it was a big shift to make it to a self-publishing, user-generated space.
So Tarun, I think you're bringing up two very important points, which kind of allude to a fundamental shift in the business model. One is in terms of, in your kind of industry, you kind of bring in people to a centralized location to create content, curate content, and then distribute that particular content. Now the realization is that the location of the person doesn't matter. You can remotely produce the shows or the news and stuff like that. That's number one. And number two, seems like there's also been a significant advent of crowdsourced content for consumption.
Correct.
Fantastic.
And and just to go ahead, and I think we did a lot of stuff around that into our ad units, our monetization units. We also realized that the customer or the advertiser wanted to be more bottom funnel focused. So we, over the period, have built out a fair amount of programmatic bottom funnel advertising possibilities, which we've put a lot more ML behind. So because we started one thing, that led to another, that needed more automation, that needed more AI products. So the whole value chain got disrupted and almost got recreated over the last.
Understood. So there may be some revenue generating opportunity sitting with you for all our audience. You're saying crowdsourced content. You're open to receive crowdsourced content. So we all can generate and probably monetize that with ZEE5. You're on mute, Tarun. You're speaking on mute.
Yeah, we can. We've also built an entire self-publishing creators dashboard that goes live very soon, which will be on revenue share basis, which will allow everybody to self-publish, will be able to see what you've been able to create in terms of volumes of views and volumes of revenue for yourself.
Fantastic. I'll certainly check up that and get myself educated on that business model. Coming back to you, Rahul, you did mention that some of the underlying technology was already available. You took about 24 hours to respond to, some of the sticky problems that came to the surface on account of the lockdown scenario. So why wasn't that technology harnessed before? Why such a global pandemic has to happen for Intel to access that existing technology?
So actually, before I go there, I would like to thank Tarun, because all the stuff he's talking about sounds like lots of money coming our way, which is awesome. Because anything is based in cloud, and we just love it, right? So great. But I think coming to your question, Rajesh, that technology has existed. The challenge, and it's existed. We use it, by the way. So for example, working from home, doing remote debugs, remote power-ons, video conferencing, and we all have it. I mean, we've used it for a long time.
Right.
And the challenge was that it was not used at that scale because we didn't have to, right? Because the fact
sorry to interrupt you. My point was more from a perspective of supply chain. You did allude to the
okay,
supply chains with lockdown, and then you harnessed the existing technology to unlock those supply chains.
Sure.
It was more from that perspective.
Sure. I think again, it again comes back to the fact that we did not kind of have to do that, right? So for example, you have parallel suppliers. You always know for a fact that when you have multiple suppliers, one of them is going to come through on time. That's kind of how you bake your supply chain model on. And it's very rare you realize that you're trying to get something from China, from Taiwan, from the US, and all three of them stop, right? So then what do you do? So some of these things really have been kind of a wake-up call for some of our supply chain management systems, that how do you work this stuff when the next such crisis happens, right? How do you do that stuff? But the second part of that really was that it just made our system more, let's call it nimble and real time. So for example, what we did in that scenario really was, we did have the technology to track it pretty much on a real time basis. We never had to, right? Because you click a button and it'll show up in some time, but we now had to activate a system that made that tracking real time possible, because we were making real time decisions when something got locked down. I mean, Malaysia got locked down, Singapore opened, vice versa, right?
Understood.
So I think that testing had never happened with the technology just because we never had to. And now that was kind of tested to the, well, hopefully we don't have to test it again, but it tested to the extreme, because we were pretty much in line zone situation in some cases till something just materialized.
Understood. Thanks for that, Rahul. So Biswajit, back to you in terms of any new business model at this.
We saw quite a lot of work towards the conversational commerce. Like a lot of people came and we worked on those, converting the interface to the voice side. So we have a pretty strong conversational AI practice. So that kind of got a lot of work.
So when you say conversational commerce, just for the benefit of everyone, what does it mean?
Basically you add an interface where you can chat in your native language. And especially in the medical domain. So we have worked for some of the requirements where the bot will do the first level screening of the patient. So like if you have some symptoms like that. So these are the areas we saw quite a lot of work, and we augmented ourselves to kind of and the timeline for those releases were very, very short. Like can you give it 3 weeks, 4 weeks kind of a time. So we kind of worked with Microsoft to deliver one such thing where it was a very short time frame and supporting local language. So many of these cases it is a non-English, but even if it is English, it's a flavor towards a local dialect, etc. So that's one area of work. The second was on the enterprise kitchen. So I think it was a very because these kitchen industries, but that kind of started a little before this lockdown, but we see a lot of focus going on towards bringing technology to an industrialized kitchen. So the kitchens which supplies to large the airlines and other things. So there you want to increase the digital touch points and remove some of the dependencies on.
Understood. So fantastic points all over from Tarun, Rahul, Biswajit, new business models. Also in terms of a realization that some of it may also be inertia. The technology is there, it is just inertia. Some of it is basically repurposing whatever infrastructure and whatever resources we have. And that's all, that's really in terms of, for technology as well as the new approaches which are reshaping the businesses and bringing in newer approaches, right? Maybe we have about 5 minutes, exactly about 5 minutes. If there are any questions from the audience, we can pick that up. So anybody wants to ask a question to any of our three wonderful panelists?
So while people come back with questions, probably since Tarun is here, so we work with Z5 very closely, and we have worked on the OTT space and some of our recommendation engine and things. So we work on their app. So a lot of this has really, where you keep people engaged, you increase the eyeball, increase the time of engagements. So these are some of those new things which you have seen. I myself got so many, discussions along with the G5 guys. So there is a lot of things happening on the OTT space, and as Tarun was mentioning, so that's an area. I think it has got a real fillip in this whole scenario which you are in.
Absolutely. I think there
overnight the government wanted us to change our bitrate ladder, and that was another very big challenge that we had on our hands. And the telecom department and the telcos kind of got worried because the pressure that they were seeing on the pipes because of work from home, as well as for so much video streaming.
Yes.
They asked us to elevate all the top bit rates and bring HD down to ST. And sometimes, I believe people lack the appreciation of what it takes to do this overnight. And it kind of is not possible, but anyway.
Understood. Apparently, this is a no Q&A session, so I'm sorry. Before we sign off in the next 2 to 3 minutes, if one or two things that you three would like to share with the audience about digital transformation, what the company should be looking at, what do you think are the enablers, especially given the current scenario and the circumstances, what would that be? Tarun, we can start with you. Maybe one or two things that could have appeared to you as the drivers of digital transformation, new business models.
So one of the things, and I studied digital transformation at Kellogg's. I'm now doing an executive MBA on digital transformation itself for an entire year, and I have an excellent professor who teaches us AI/ML called Professor Sani. Everybody should read his book called The Sentient Organization. But I think that there is an increasing need for most CXOs to realize that most parts of their organization can do a lot with AI and ML. And I think, this is not a fad. This is not like what people thought about digital marketing many years ago, that this is a fad. Then people thought about, automation, and that is a fad. But really, we have moved from automation to AI, ML. And I think the machine can help you solve some very complex problems on a daily basis. And the combination of ML and RPA will be very good for an organization to stay controlled in both their costs and to uplift their efficiency in the long run. And I think a commitment to transform yourself in repetitive tasks around RPAs and around complex problems with ML would really change the nature of work that you do, the kind of people you employ, and the outcomes you get.
Understood. Thank you, Tarun. So Rahul and Biswajit, we have 3 minutes. So 1 minute for Rahul, 1 minute for Biswajit, 1 minute for me to wrap up. Otherwise, I will get evicted by Shivangi.
I have primarily one point, which is I think our investment and our ability in our own mental models of doing remote collaboration, right? High tech companies, we have all the technology, but sometimes we don't have the mental understanding of how to really orchestrate remote collaboration. I think it's very doable. We've done it. A lot of companies are doing it. And I think investing more in that and having that mindset in the management chain of how you actually make these things happen. I mean, it's got two pieces to it. One is the technology part. Another part is a human part. I mean, there's also a mental health part to it, right? Because not everyone's used to just working remotely all by themselves and tracking the screen. And so I think factoring all these things into a holistic way of managing their employees when they're remote is I think a key part of capitalizing on what's kind of going on right now, which is not, I mean, it's not ended. I don't know how long it's going to go, but I think capitalizing that is key. Sorry, that's all I have. So I'll give you some time back.
Thank you, Rahul. How about you, Biswajit?
So if the digital transformation has to be seen in a 4-quadrant, that magic 4-quadrant typically we talk about, right, in every case. So there are 4 types of digital transformation. I mean, one is, of course, the beginners who are just trying to see. The second is conservatives who are kind of think they want to do, but no means and great leadership push. And then fashionists, they are basically taking 1 or 2 business lines on 1 or 2 channels, they're converting into a digital platform, and then rest of it is going as usual. And fourth, of course, is the digital masters. So these masters are basically, they're really driving into those like full conventional way of digital transformation. So now there is a metric which we need to derive at, which is called digital IQ, or DIQ. So you all very, very familiar and quotienting everything which we want as a metrics people. So the digital IQ or DIQ of an organization is a very important metric we need to assess. So there are a set of questionnaires, or there are a set of tools to assess yourself, which are the lines you want to prioritize for your digital transformations. Is it for capacity expansion? Is it for customer experience? Is it for operational productivity? So all of that actually need to be assessed and see what's your current digital IQ and where you want to be 6 months, 1 year, 2 years down the line. So that's the way the organization should plan. There are a lot of tools and things available to do that. I think we are in the right time and right place because of these scenarios, and we like it.
Understood. Biswajit, sorry, I need to interrupt because I'm getting signals from the organizer. So I think just to sum up, reshaping business using technology, also we got some new perspectives. One is in terms of sentient organization from Tarun, which is basically the thinking organization, and digital IQ from Biswajit. So new businesses also require new terminologies as well as new approaches. So this has been a wonderful session, and back to you, Shivangi, before you find me further.
No, thank you so much, Rajesh, and thank you, Biswajit, Rahul, Tarun, for sharing your thoughts and experiences. I'm sure this will be motivational for the participants and for the founders who are logged in.